management. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning. This is Nathaniel Lee. Thank you for joining us today. We have another exciting show. There's a lot of legal things in the news in our state, across the country, and everywhere. There's a lot of important legal decisions that are coming out every day. I have my superstar panel, attorney Vanita Banks, master in tax, cybersecurity expert, research analyst, crackpot, and also we have attorney Milton Grimes, famously represented Rodney King. But we have so many topics to get involved with today. You can join us on our call-in. Don't forget, you can call in. It's a live call-in show, and I'll give you the number in a second. But before I get started, Attorney Banks sent me information about an important case. That is that the Supreme Court on Friday struck down a rule that banned bump stock. Now, that was the bump stock is an attachment that transforms a semi-automatic rifle into a weapon that can discharge at a rate of hundreds of rounds per minute. This was done following the mass shooting in 2018 in Las Vegas, in which a gunman used a semi-automatic rifle equipped with bump stock device to kill 60 people and injured over 500. So, Attorney Banks, you brought this up. This just seemed like an insane ruling to me. I don't get it. These justices decided that a weapon of mass destruction is a good idea for anybody to have now.
Good morning, Attorney Lee. I'm sorry, my phone was on mute. Very illogical decision, in my opinion, Attorney Lee and Grimes. The Trump administration pushed for a ban on bump stops in the aftermath of the Las Vegas massacre in 2017, when a gunman fired on a music festival from his hotel room, and he used, and let me back up and say that the gunman was found in his hotel to have fired more than 1,000 rounds into the crowd in 11 minutes. He had 23 assault style rifles in his room, and 14 of those weapons had bump stops. The Las Vegas massacre is the deadliest shooting in U.S. history, killing over 60 people and injuring thousands of others. In the aftermath of that incredible tragedy, the Trump administration supported a ban on bump stops, because bump stops, they turn rifles into machine guns. And so this ruling and the hair that it split it, if you will, stands for the proposition, and this was a 6-3 ruling written by Clarence Thomas, which held that a bump stop does not turn a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun. Makes no sense.
Insane. See, with the elimination of background and screening for weapons in most states now, anyone could own a weapon. So now you give people the mechanism not only to kill people they know, but to kill everybody in the whole neighborhood in a matter of minutes. It's just an insane type ruling. And it's almost like this court that just went off the deep end with this ruling. I can't figure. We see all the ethical transgression that occurs now, and they're saying that these wealthy businessmen could buy a Supreme Court judge, and you have to say, what's going on here? I mean, why would they have such an idiotic opinion that give people the right to use weapons of mass destruction in the United States? These type automatic weapons should only be used in war, but not in civilian settings, and that's why I'm concerned about that.
But there's some humanity in war, supposedly, Nathaniel. I can't not understand why anyone, especially Clarence Thomas, I guess, could write an opinion justifying our civilization using or possessing, owning such a lethal weapon. It's not for hunting. It's not for sport. Why would they authorize the ownership or the manufacture of a weapon of that type? What kind of mentality is it that promotes, allows, justifies, and authorizes the use of that weapon? It's only for the destruction of mankind. So no, it doesn't make sense.
And not a day goes by that we don't see a mass shooting in this country. And it's just become almost normalized, and that people have become numb to it. We also know that 70% of Americans, they want, as you stated, Nathaniel Lee, it only makes sense to have reasonable gun laws, including background checks. We also know that when there was a federal assault weapons ban in effect, that shootings decreased. There's no purpose for a AR-15 automatic weapons of mass destruction to exist in a civilized society. There's just no reason for that.
Yeah.
Several states do have a ban on assault weapons, including Illinois.
I never forget the video that was on YouTube for a minute when the guy got out of his car in Buffalo, New York. And I hadn't realized how sudden death could occur. And if you remember, he got out of the car and went, pop, pop, pop. There were 3 people lying dead right away. I think he killed 9 Black folk in that assault at that shopping center, recall?
That's right, yes.
A couple of years. I mean, but that video there just brought it home to me. Like, dang, this man just got out of the car within a matter of 1.5 seconds. He pop, 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 and 3 people were dead that was going about their business or their life on a bright, sunny Saturday morning. It's beyond me.
Bump
Well,
stop.
Go ahead. Take one quick caller. Wait a second. Imhotep, you had a question to come in for us today, sir.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to all my illustrious guests here. And we appreciate you for bringing us these legal issues that we definitely have to pay attention to in our community. It affects us. I was traveling last week, so I didn't get you guys pull you up on my phone like I should have, but maybe you commented on that venture fund decision. That was horrible. Hopefully that'll be overturned on appeal, but that was horrible. But 3 things I want you guys to maybe think about real fast and comment on. First of all, the tenor I've seen since the Hunter Biden verdict is kind of mixed from the gun rights people. You have Maj Toure and Pastor Darrell Scott, Trump loyalists who are saying that Hunter Biden shouldn't have been tried for that. He has gun rights. Many people may embellish on the application. And the fact is that he was prosecuted. He shouldn't be prosecuted. Kind of shocked me, but it's kind of mixed from some comments I've seen. I may have looked at a couple hundred just in passing on Twitter. So I'd like your opinions on that. The OKC Supreme Court decision on Tulsa, horrible. We do have living survivors. We do have reparation history paid to everyone, Japanese, Koreans, even to the Holocaust survivors, and that didn't happen here. Just seems to be anti-Blackness all the way around. And can the Justice Department do anything to help remedy those? We need reparations. California just proposed $800 billion in reparations. So that was a terrible decision. And with the subsequent decision, latest thing you just talked about with the bump stocks, you know, we have a local ordinance here, Nate, and I think in a number of locales to where they've outlawed Glock switches. If you all are not familiar with Glock switches, they operate the same as a bump stock, but yet on the Glock pistol, it turns it into an automatic pistol. So I'm thinking ever since the decision that you're probably going to see subsequent legal action to overturn those ordinances against Glock switches. You know, through a few things there. But as always, I love you all, appreciate you all. We would be lost without y'all as far as some of these legal things. Thank you for taking my call.
May I just get a clarification? Is it B-U-M-P and then stock, S-T-O-C-K, or stop, S-T-O-P? I'm not familiar with the term at all.
B-U-M-P, S-T-O-C-K.
That's what I thought. Well, what this
It's
gentleman
an
just brought.
accessory
Okay.
that's, you know, added to a rifle that turns it into, it permits a semi-automatic weapon to fire like a machine gun.
Well, I guess we will see more guns on the street now, since the trend has been that when officers want new weapons or more modern weapons, they turn them in to gun dealers or their departments, and their departments and gun dealers end up selling them to the public, the old weapons, so that the officers may supply themselves with the more modern new weapon. So now we got bump stock being legitimized, and the gentleman just spoke of Glock switches. No, I hadn't heard of that. But damn, if I was a police officer, I would want to hurry to the store and buy me one of these new weapons to increase my effectiveness as an officer. Turn in my old weapon so it can be sold to the public.
Okay. And that's another insane
15
idea.
states. 15
According to the
states.
article that our fearless leader, Mr. Lee, sent me 2 weeks ago, that's what happens that's what has happened in over 50,000 crime scenes in the past years. Police weapons are used.
And we talked about how police departments across the country, including in California, are selling these guns and rifles, these weapons, back into the communities, and they're being used to kill and injure citizens in the community. It just really makes no sense. I am hoping that Nathaniel Lee, Attorney Lee, that you'll address that issue in Indianapolis. But really, a bad decision written by Clarence Thomas, essentially stating that the ATF, the Tobacco and Firearm Agency, does not have the right to issue a regulation banning bump stocks, because a bump stock is not a machine gun. And in a concurring opinion, Justice Alito stated that Congress must change, not the ATF, that law. It can't be done by regulation, that it must be done by Congress. So the ruling stands for the proposition that a weapon that's fitted with a bump stock or one of these Glock attachments that the caller talked about that it cannot be regulated as a machine gun. And Justice Sotomayor, in a very scathing dissent, and I quote part of her dissent, she stated, "When I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call this bird a duck, and that a bump stock equipped semi-automatic rifle that fires automatically more than one shot without having to be manually reloaded by a single function of the trigger constitutes a machine gun." So the majority opinion, it's incomprehensible. It splits hairs almost to an infinite degree.
And by the way, our calling number is 833-653-3529. That's 833-653-3529. The next topic before
Attorney Lee?
Yes.
We have a question in the chat box regarding the Hunter Biden case decided this week, and whether or not President Biden should pardon his son.
Oh, wait a second, chat. I thought it was a no-brainer. I thought that we have people get pardons all the time, and it was kind of a strange prosecution to me. He didn't shoot anybody. He didn't threaten anybody. He purchased a weapon, but here at our gun show, you can purchase weapons without any background check or anything. You just buy weapons. And I never understood that, the prosecution. And I don't recall any other person ever being prosecuted for buying a gun because they were regularly high. It was just a strange type ordeal, but he was convicted.
On 3 felony counts for lying about his drug use on his application for a gun. These types of charges are almost never prosecuted. And he had the gun for only 11 days. And if you remember, this was a Trump appointed prosecutor who could have been replaced, but in order to be transparent, a decision was made that he wouldn't be replaced in this case.
I think that the Biden administration has made a series of mistakes in terms of the Justice Department. I just think that, I like what Trump did, because once he became the president, first thing he did was fire all 94 U.S. attorneys and AG and appointed his own person. He replaced the FBI guy, Jim Comey, who brought Hillary Clinton down. So, I thought it was a mistake, because I think that this prosecution had too much of political twins to it, in the sense that originally they had agreed to a misdemeanor plea agreement, and then the Republicans in Congress did push back, so they changed it. They withdrew the plea, and then they decided to go forward with the felony charge. I just thought it was just a strange ordeal.
And President Biden could pardon his son, and he could have appointed another prosecutor. But in this case, he did not.
Yeah. Well, so much for that. There was a fascinating thing that happened in California this week, the People versus Flores case, and I had a chance to read that. But it said something in the opinion, Milton, that struck me that is so relevant today. The California Supreme Court recognized that there may be some reason why these African-American men take flight when they are confronted by police officers.
Right.
I thought that was a fascinating observation, because we had a series of police shootings here in Indianapolis. I'm going to file 3 lawsuits this week, one with all 3 plaintiffs with the same thing. They're shooting these gentlemen that are unarmed. And instead, they justify the use of deadly force, but the question is whether or not the force is necessary. So they send a signal to the community that you interact with police officers, you're likely to be shot and killed in certain circumstances. So would that also result in citizens themselves attempt to flee police officers in fear of their life, thinking that if they're confronted by a police officer, that they could die?
Well, the California Supreme Court has addressed that issue and this backed up and said, with the present circumstances, it's understandable why African American men do not want to have an encounter with law enforcement. And so if you see them ducking down, walking away, or running away, and you don't have any crime to articulate, you can't stop them. You can't detain them because it could be because they fear for their life. That's a reasonable explanation for their action. So I thought it was a very good decision. Yeah.
There was something in the decision that was really, I thought, brought this all home. The Court of California said the High Court recognized that citizens have the right to ignore the police and go about their business, and the refusal to cooperate without more does not furnish the minimal level of objective justification needed for a detention or seizure. But the court also reasoned that unprovoked flight is simply not a mere refusal to cooperate. Flight, by its very nature, is not going about one business. In fact, it's just the opposite, they said in Warlow. So they, on the one hand, they say, well, you can ignore police officers, but then we have laws now that make it mandatory to show your ID. And so they've actually, since the 70s, there's been a reduction in the rights under the 4th Amendment. But this court recognized at least one thing important, that is that it's not unusual for certain citizens to be in fear of their life when they see police officers or police stop. And in some situations, the flight may be reasonable in the sense that you got, you know, I looked at what happened in the Mississippi case, how they tortured the people. And so you're wondering, when you see these type cases, also I watched in horror the beatdown of the gentleman down in Memphis, Tennessee. And you say to yourself, maybe he had a better chance of living if he would have fled. I don't know. You know, just beat the guy to death.
Yeah.
But the third case Attorney Bank brought on was the Sandy Hook survivors graduated, and Alex Jones, the assets were ordered to be liquidated. I guess Attorney Banks, that was a just ending for a terrible tragedy.
Well, survivors of another horrific mass shooting in our country, many of those survivors are graduating at the same time as a judge this week ruled that Alex Jones, who had defamed and lied about this case, it was ordered that his assets be liquidated. Somewhat bittersweet.
Do you think that those survivors be able to get any real money out of that, Attorney Banks?
I don't know. He's still working. He has assets, and it's $1 billion judgment against Alex Jones. And so his personal assets and his personal financial situation is going to be under severe scrutiny for quite some time. If he has any assets, they're going to be seized. That's for sure.
You know, I always wonder, I see every now and then I drift and watch the other TV channels and to determine what news that they're putting out. And one of the things that was fascinating to me, after the Trump verdict, in which he was convicted of 34 felonies, the broadcast focused on people that were saying that these were trumped up charges. And when I watch the evolution of this dialogue with cases such as Al Jones, it's clear to me why there's such a high level of people in the country that believe this false narrative. So when I watched it on TV, they never once talked about, in terms of the Trump verdict, sort of like this Al Jones did, that they never once talked about what he actually did. Everything that the prosecutors said that he did, he actually did. And then the same person goes to Capitol Hill, a convicted felon, and they're worshiping this person like he's a god. And I was thinking, it's almost like our country is going insane with this idea that you could somehow justify a person who do all types of crazy, ridiculous things, and he's been worshipped by many. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now,
well, it didn't just start, folks. This big lie that they're told to justify their argument, position, and attack. So it's just another way of doing the same thing that's been done over the years, Nathaniel, to me.
well, moving forward on this issue, the one thing that is also relevant, they keep bringing the entertainment before the cameras. And I don't know whether you've been paying attention to it. And one of the notes I was reading about said that a lot of these African Americans was drawn to Trump because of his felony arrest and conviction. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but it keeps getting repeated. It was just bothering me that that somehow that they think that that's something that the typical African American male think is relevant to their voting process. Doesn't make it just angers me to think that they believe that because a person has a felony conviction, that somehow that'll give black folks a reason to vote for them. And you know, we're in a country now that you can't have any reasonable discussion now about political processes, Milton, Vanita, without people getting really angry, because there's no middle ground anymore. You know, we watch in horror as people didn't like the results of the presidential election and they try to overthrow the federal government. We saw with our own eyes all these lawyers that are involved. They're going to jail. They're losing their license. They've been fined, suspended, or otherwise. And so we're in a process now where when we talk about democracy, what do we do in terms of the disinformation that we see populating the airways? Every day, you know, you can't look at the TV. Even CNN, I think, is becoming a little bit more right-wing, you know, with some of their interviews. I don't know if you've been watching them, but sometimes I just turn them off. And so the point I'm making is that we really are in a desperate situation in terms of democracy if we don't really get out and vote this fall.
we don't get out and vote, and if we don't educate ourselves about what's going on and what is the truth, what are the facts, as opposed to listening to some cartoonish interpretation of a situation. I can't forget that 30 some years ago, this is not the name drop or anything, but I was invited to England to speak on the Rodney King case. Cochran was invited to speak on the OJ case. But on a Sunday night, we were at a union hall, and there were 800 to 1,000 people there, people who were interested in their political life and environment. And it just impressed me that the public would turn out on a Sunday night to have discussions about what was happening in their country or their community on a political side. And these were common people, people in shirt sleeves. They weren't dressed in tuxedos, given a bunch of money. But it impressed me how much more people over there were involved and interested in what was happening in their communities, and they wanted to be up on it. I don't get that sense here in America, that people care that much to give their Sunday evenings or a lot of their time to what is happening. They don't, we got a problem with going out to vote to a major degree, and it's just the way it is. That's my personal opinion and observation.
And in the United States, where African-American women receive only 4% of venture capital funding in this nation, we saw a ruling this week that was referenced by one of our callers, that from an appeals court ruling that the Fearless Fund, which grants $20,000 to Black women, that initiative violates the Civil Rights Act. So we're seeing laws that were enacted to prohibit discrimination against African Americans being used and turned on its head to prohibit African Americans from empowering ourselves. These are $20,000 grants and memberships to businesses owned by Black women. And we're seeing the Section 1981 of the 1865 Civil Rights Act, which was enacted to protect formerly enslaved people from economic exclusion, being used by these anti-affirmative action groups to prevent us from empowering and helping ourselves. These challenges are being used these attacks are being used to challenge programs that are intended to benefit minority-owned business.
Hey, let me comment on that. We have seen an erosion of the rights of African America. A lot of the progress that we made, we're seeing the court roll back some of these gains. The Fearless Fund you were talking about, I read on that, counselor, and it's a $20,000 grant. In 2022, Black owners received only 2% of the $288 billion of venture capital funding. So altogether, in the whole United States of America, the Black folks got about $3 billion and everybody else got $285 billion. We've seen this is a dramatic rollback in the ability to achieve success in a business setting. Much like affirmative action, we had at the advanced degrees at your elite university, less than 2% of the students were African Americans. And they thought that affirmative action with that 2% was too much. And so now we're seeing the rollback. But counselor, it makes me go back to how this all got started. Well, when African Americans were enslaved, when we had the war between the states over this issue, when they ended the war, the Black folks who were slaves didn't have property, didn't have money, and didn't have any economic base. And that was a permanent arbitrage to the African American community. And so over the years, then we had the introduction of Jim Crow laws, the Black codes, and all these things that prevented redlining in the community. Even today, if you live in a demographic area with large African American, your car insurance rates are higher, and things like that. So with all that said, we're seeing an erosion of the ability to move ahead in society because of the laws that have now been changed, going to make it harder for the next generation of African America to achieve success. And go ahead. I'm sorry, Milton.
No. So here you're talking about an age where information and knowledge is passed at the blink of an eye with our high technology, Instagram, beyond my comprehension almost. Back to a time when we didn't even have the radio. It seems as though the information that applies to these things that are there for our use is not known amongst our people. We're not taking advantage of it. So what is the disconnect here? What is the problem with us utilizing these things that are here for us? It just is just confusing. I don't know the answer. Maybe you guys know it better than I do, I'm sure. But so what's the problem? Are we not educated about these things? Or are we just lazy and don't want to get involved? Or are we afraid? What's the problem?
I don't know, maybe Attorney Banks may have some idea. I'm flabbergasted because I don't understand. I don't understand how our young folks, like we lose an entire generation now with the introduction of the TikTok and the social media. Unfortunately, my confession is that I'm not a big social media guy, so I think that's maybe why I don't really grasp the significance of the information they're receiving. But I've been told that the source of information is coming from the social media contact, and they're formulating opinion that populated by right-wingers and stuff. And the net result is we focus on issues. I had some African American complaining about immigration, and I'm thinking, are you freaking kidding me? You're complaining about immigration, but you weren't out there protesting when they took away affirmative action.
Right.
You weren't out there when they took away diversity and inclusion things. And it goes on about these issues that are relevant to our community. And I don't see our younger generation taking a stand on these issues.
What's the problem, Vanita, with the women not knowing that it's $20,000 right there for their benefit? Nobody is applying to get that money.
It really is a serious situation. And when you can take a law, an 1865 law that was intended to protect formerly enslaved citizens in this country from discrimination, and use that to prohibit and make illegal a grant program for Black women business owners and call that discriminatory. It's just mind-boggling. And as you say, Attorney Lee, where are we protesting in the streets regarding that? That section of the law that was used states, and I quote, a law that it states that all persons shall have the same rights as, quote, white citizens to make and enforce contracts. And that's being used to state that this grant program is discriminatory and illegal.
It's shameful. Shameful.
So maybe we should have a TikTok program, a TikTok segment.
Yeah, you put it on TikTok and put it on the...
Where we're educating young people regarding these issues.
You put it in a dance routine on TikTok, maybe they'll get enlightened about it or we'll do something. But we're just not, I don't know if it's lack of education or lack of interest or lack of trust. I don't know.
Fascinating. Let's take one caller. Call, you have a question or comment for legal issue of today, sir.
Yes.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Nick, this is Guy calling. First, I wanted to congratulate Attorney Banks on being inducted into the Shortridge High School Hall of Fame alumni.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
I meant to congratulate her too. I meant to congratulate her. She got some award. You got the President Award or something this week on something, Vanita?
I was inducted into my high school, Shortridge High School Hall of Fame. It was very humbling and such an honor to have been included with such a distinguished group of fellow honorees. But Guy was there. Guy, what do you think?
I agree. It was very impressive panel that was inducted this year. Absolutely. And I hope that the tradition will continue because Shortridge was a great high school. It did a lot of good in terms of, in fact, it was the first public high school in Indiana. A lot of people don't realize that. But congratulations again. But what I wanted to speak also, you know, this country is in a state of peril. I guess you all know about the flags that were flying upside down by the Supreme Court Justice. He said his wife flew the flag, American flag upside down. But anyway, for different reasons, but I agree the country's in peril. I think that with this election coming up, is it any way that you all, with your influences, can maybe have a review of the past 25 years of this century in terms of the electoral politics from the presidential standpoint? Because you hear so many lies out here, you know, about who did this and who did that. But just take these first approximately 25 years of the 21st century and actually have the facts laid out. For instance, what happened during the Bush administration, George W. Bush? What happened during the Barack Obama administration? And, you know, up to the present time, because you hear so many lies being thrown about. I think it's important, for instance, what was done in the Obama administration. He really rescued the country from economic collapse. And, you know, you don't hear that too much. So I just wondered if you all, with your influence, could maybe get some kind of maybe a documentary or just a facts group that can maybe it could be by, you know, impartial or whatever, nonpartisan, but actually just put the facts out there for the past 25 years. What has happened in presidential electoral politics in the United States of America?
Hey, guy, here's the problem. People memory is short-lived. Like, for example, we talked about George Bush in October 2008 during the presidential election year. President Obama was running against John McCain. In October, the country went into a financial meltdown. Without
Absolutely.
the legislation passed, we had something happen in the United States during that time period that never happened before, even during the Great Depression. That is that we had the financial industry froze. No credits, no line of credit, money was frozen. They had to put money in the economy to keep the whole country from going kaput.
Absolutely.
Then Obama comes in, they rescue, did a phenomenal job, doesn't get credit. Now, what we do know today, the stock market is the highest it's ever been. So if you had money when President Biden took office, if you had money invested in the typical stock market, your money would be 50% higher now. If you invest in a company like NVIDIA, you'd invest $10,000, it'd be worth $250,000 today. So what I'm saying is that the financial metrics have been way better under Democrat leadership versus Republican. However, the political narrative says just the opposite. I see people on TV, they forget about the fact that everywhere you go in America, there's construction. We have the lowest African American unemployment rate since I've been alive. So you have factors like that are very positive that people just simply ignore. It's right in your face every day. I mean, if you watch the market, you would know how well the country's doing financially. We are the best financial run country in the whole world. We're the envy of the whole world right now. And so they gave the prior president credit for what happened. A pandemic hit. When it hit, he thought you could cure COVID with bleach. And so we had all these positive things happen that doesn't get populated into our dialogue. And I think that's problematic. So I don't know. I mean, we're not communicating with a lot of young folks because they're not looking at traditional news shows. A lot of young folks getting their, like I said earlier, they're getting their information through social media. And social media, TikTok, controlled by what, China? I'm told. I don't know. I mean, Facebook, I discovered something that was unusual about Facebook. When I left the United States of America and I went to Jamaica, none of the information on Facebook was negative. It was cultural stuff. It was the most amazing experience. United States, we get all kind of crazy. We get X-rated stuff. Down there, it was all culture. It was just shocking to me that they changed what you're able to see based on the locale. So I think that's part of the problem, Guy.
But I think we, those of us who are that know and are in certain positions, I think we have to, because like the saying goes, the only thing preventing evil from triumph is for people that are of goodwill to stand up. And I think a lot of people, a lot of economics people, economists, where are they talking about this? See, everything is framed on a Democrat or Republican basis, but that's not a good frame. And the presidential candidate on the other side of the ledger than the Democrat, he's an expert at framing things. For instance, he framed the thing that he's doing in a political point of view, and it's not political. He's a criminal, and he's a convicted criminal, and he's framing it that it's the other party that's against him, but it's not like that. So I think people have got to stand up and put the facts out there. If they don't, we're lost.
Hey, Guy, one final comment on that. Here's what's important going forward that you tell people. The Trump Justice Department in August of 2018 prosecuted his lawyer, Michael Cohen. If you look at the Michael Cohen indictment and conviction, a guilty plea, it's identical evidence that they filed against Donald Trump. So there was no evidence that was different, same evidence. They determined to put him in prison for 3 years, and Trump then was saying a sham prosecution. So just check it out. You'll see the actual indictments, and all of a sudden you realize it's the same. But thank you for calling, Guy.
And I
Thank
think
you.
You're
Guy is
welcome.
Guy is making some excellent points. We've got to figure out a way to take these facts and translate them into messaging that is clear and concise, determine a communication strategy as to where, our people are getting their information. So if it's Instagram, TikTok, or whatever the technology is, that messaging, and Guy was suggesting, take it over decades, if you will, and really translate it down and then determine who the messengers are going to be to articulate those messages to our local communities. On the point that you made, Nathaniel, the excellent points regarding the economy, regarding all the things that are beneficial to our communities, including a cap on insulin costs, the student loan debt relief. You talked about the infrastructure initiative and so many other things. How do we get that messaging down to our communities? I think when we make the point, however, regarding the stock market, that is absolutely true if you were able to invest in stock. But so many of our communities, they're focused on, those bread and butter issues. They're looking at, okay, my gas prices are still high and, food costs too much. And so we really have to, I agree. There's Project 2025 out there, and they're telling us exactly what's going to happen. One of the things is they're going to fire everybody in federal government agency positions. These are career employees that go to work every single day. They're not political people. They're American workers. And so those are going to be fired. Some of the agencies are going to be severely restricted in their ability to bring services to the American people. And we're being told through Project 2025 that those people are going to be replaced with former President Trump's loyalists. And so the question becomes, how are we going to, again, get our messaging down to our communities that are many of which are struggling on a day-to-day basis?
Well, thank you so much. And we have a couple callers, but we're out of time. Caller, I apologize that we're not going to be able to listen to your thoughtful conversation, but we'll be back next Saturday, and make sure you call early. And I'd like to thank our special guests for calling in. Guy, that was very good. And of course, our superstar panel. And until next week, we're going to be praying for everybody to stay healthy and well. Until then, have a great day.
Call in next week, Renee. You made some great comments in the chat. We'll continue our discussion. Everybody have a reflective and an impactful Juneteenth next week.
Thank you. I forgot about Juneteenth.